The rifle barrel pressed against Kyra's temple before she even heard the footsteps. Her 3-year-old daughter Lila whimpered in her arms, both of them trembling from 3 days without food. The stolen apple from the orchard had been their last meal, and now they were caught red-handed trying to milk a cow in someone else's barn. "Drop the bucket," came the gravelly voice behind her. "Turn around slow." Kyra's heart hammered as she obeyed, clutching Lila tighter. The man before her was all shadows and steel-weathered leather chaps. A black hat pulled low and eyes the color of storm clouds. A silver star glinted on his vest. This wasn't just any rancher. This was law enforcement. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "She's just a baby. I'll take whatever punishment you want, but please don't hurt her." The gunslinger's gaze flicked to the child, then back to Kyra's hollow cheeks and desperate eyes. Something shifted. In his expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps of his own buried pain. He'd seen that look before, in his own mirror, after the war took everything from him. "When did you last eat?" he asked, lowering the rifle slightly. "Tuesday," Kyra admitted. "Maybe Monday." The days blurred together. Douse. Selim Voss had spent 5 years as a bounty hunter, tracking down outlaws and dispensing justice with cold efficiency. He'd hardened his heart deliberately, built walls around the man he used to be. But this woman with her fierce maternal love reminded him of someone he'd failed to protect long ago. "Get up," he said gruffly. "Both of you." Kyra struggled to her feet, expecting to be marched to the nearest jail. Instead, he walked toward the barn door, then stopped when she didn't follow. "I said get up, the house is this way, the house." Confusion clouded her features. "You want to keep standing there arguing? Or you want to feed that child?" Lila's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, a pitiful sound that cut through Selim's defenses like a blade. He cursed under his breath and strode toward them, scooping up the bucket of milk without a word. "I don't understand," Kyra said. "Stumbling after him? Aren't you going to arrest us?" "For what? Being hungry?" Pushed open the kitchen door to reveal a modest but clean space. "Sit down. I'll make eggs." As he moved around the kitchen with surprising grace, Kyra watched him carefully. There was something wounded about this man, something that recognized the pain in others. His hands, she noticed, were gentle when he handed Lila a cup of warm milk, though his voice remained gruff. "Where's her father?" he asked, cracking eggs into a pan. "Dead," Kyra said simply. "Consumption took him last winter. I've been trying to get to my sister in Colorado, but..." She gestured helplessly at their ragged appearance. Selim nodded, understanding filling the silence. He'd heard variations of this story countless times, families destroyed by disease, poverty, the harsh realities of frontier life. What he hadn't expected was to care. "You can stay the night," he said, placing a plate of eggs before them. "But come morning, you'll have to move on." Even as he spoke the words, Selim knew they were a lie. Something about this woman and her child had already begun to thaw the ice around his heart. Dawn brought the sound of Lila's laughter. Sound Selim hadn't heard in his own home for 5 years. He stood in the doorway, watching the child chase. Chickens in the yard while her mother tried to catch her, both of them clean and fed for the first time in weeks. "She's beautiful," he said, stepping onto the porch. Kyra looked up, her cheeks pink from the morning air. "She's all I have left." Her voice carried the weight of loss, but also fierce determination. "I should probably pack our things." "I know you said storm's coming," Selim interrupted, gesturing toward the darkening horizon. "Bad one, by the looks of it. You'd be foolish to travel in that." It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. The truth was, he'd spent the night listening to the soft sounds of life in his house, Lila's sleepy murmurs, Kyra's gentle humming as she soothed her daughter. For the first time since the war, the silence hadn't felt oppressive. "I could work," Kyra offered suddenly. "I'm good with animals, and I can cook." "I notice you don't have anyone helping with the ranch." "I work alone," he said automatically. "Everyone needs help sometimes." Their eyes met, and something passed between them in understanding, perhaps, or recognition of mutual loneliness. Selim had built this ranch as a fortress against the world, but now it felt more like a prison. "1 week," he said finally. Then, We'll see. As if summoned by his words, the storm arrived with biblical fury. Rain lashed against the windows while thunder shook the house. Selim found himself hyper-aware of Kyra's presence, the way she moved through his kitchen like she belonged there. The gentle way she spoke to her daughter, the quiet competence with which she helped him tend the animals. "Now, you're not what I expected," she said that evening, watching him whittle a small horse for Lila. "What did you expect? Someone harder? More?" Closed off. Selim's hands stilled. "Maybe I am." "No," she said softly. "You're just hurt. There's a difference." That night, as the storm raged outside, Selim found himself talking for the first time in years. He told her about the war, about the friends he'd lost, about the guilt that had driven him to this isolated existence. Kyra listened without judgment, her eyes reflecting understanding born of her own losses. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "if maybe the people we've lost would want us to be happy?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Selim had spent so long punishing himself for surviving that he'd forgotten what it felt like to want something for himself. "I wouldn't know how to be happy anymore," he admitted. "Maybe it's not about knowing how," Kyra said. "Maybe it's about being willing to try." When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and bright. Selim stood on his porch, watching Kyra teach Lila to collect eggs, and felt something shift inside his chest. For the first time in 5 years, the silence of his ranch felt less like exile and more like peace. But peace, he knew, was a fragile thing. And in the distance, dust clouds on the horizon suggested that his past was about to catch up with him. The riders appeared at noon, 6 men in dusty coats with hard eyes and harder intentions. Selim recognized their leader immediately, Joaquin Reyes, a man he'd put behind bars 3 years ago, who'd apparently found his way to freedom. "Selim Voss," Reyes called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "Been a long time." Selim stepped onto the porch, his hand resting casually on his gun. "Not long enough, Joaquin." From the window, Kyra watched the exchange with growing alarm. She'd seen that look in men's eyes before, the cold calculation that preceded violence. Her protective instincts flared as she pulled Lila closer. "Here?" "You've gone soft," Reyes continued, his gaze shifting to the house. "Living the quiet life. Got yourself a woman and child, I see." "They're not part of this," Selim said, his voice deadly quiet. "Everything's part of this, Voss. You cost me 3 years of my life. Time I'll never get back." The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Selim could feel Kyra's eyes on him, could sense her fear, and it ignited something primal in his chest. He'd spent years running from his past, but he wouldn't let it touch her or Lila. "You want me, Reyes? Then take me." "Ow. But you ride away from here first." "I don't think so." Reyes smiled, cold and predatory. "I think I'll take my time. Maybe get to know your family a little better." The word family hit Selim like a physical blow. When had he started thinking of them that way? When had their happiness become more important than his own safety? "You've got 10 seconds to get off my land," Selim said, his hand moving to his gun. "Or what? You'll shoot all 6 of us." The standoff stretched endlessly until Lila's voice broke the silence. "Mama, I'm scared." That small, frightened sound shattered something in Selim. In one fluid motion, he drew his gun and fired, the bullet striking the ground inches from Reyes's horse. The animal reared, but Reyes held his seat, laughing. "The killer, I remember," he said. "But you're outnumbered, Voss. And now, you've got something to lose." Before Selim could respond, Kyra stepped onto the porch, Lila in her arms. "Let me talk to them," she said quietly. "Get back inside," Selim ordered, but she ignored him. "I know what you want," she called to Reyes. "You want him to suffer? But killing innocents won't give you what you're looking for." "Smart woman," Reyes said. "Too bad she's chosen the wrong man to protect." "Has she?" Kyra's voice was steady, fearless. "Because the man I know would die before he let anything happen to those he cares about. And the man I know has never missed a shot in his VW." Life. Selim stared at her, amazed by her courage. She was protecting him, even though he'd brought this danger to her door. The realization that she cared enough to risk herself for him was overwhelming. "Last chance, Reyes," Selim said, his voice carrying new conviction. "Right away, or I'll show you exactly how good my aim still is." For a moment, uncertainty flickered in Reyes's eyes. Then he smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This isn't over, Voss. We'll be back." As the riders disappeared into the distance, Selim felt Kyra's hand slip into his. Such a simple gesture, but it grounded him, reminded him that he wasn't alone anymore. "They'll come back," he said. "I know," she replied. "But when they do, we'll be ready." The word we hung between them, weighted with promise and possibility. For the first time in his life, Selim Voss wasn't facing his demons alone. 3 days passed in tense preparation. Selim taught Kyra to shoot, his hands guiding hers as she learned to hold the rifle steady. The proximity was intoxicating, her warmth against his chest, the scent of her hair, the way she bit her lip in concentration. "You're a natural," he said, watching her hit the target 3 times in a row. "I have good motivation," she replied, glancing toward where Lila played with the wooden horse he'd carved. "I won't let them hurt her. They won't get the chance." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Kyra asked the question that had been haunting them both. "What happens after? When this is over?" Selim was quiet for a long moment. "I suppose you'll continue to Colorado. Find your sister. Is that what you want?" The simple question cut deep. What did he want? For years, he'd wanted nothing but solitude, penance for the lives he'd taken. But now, watching Kyra braid Leela's hair by lamplight, he wanted something he'd never dared hope for: a future. "I want you to be safe," he said finally. "That's not what I asked." Before he could answer, Lila appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Mama, will you tell me a story?" As Kyra rose to tuck her daughter into bed, her fingers brushed Selim's shoulder. The simple touch sent electricity through him, and he found himself following them inside, drawn by the domestic scene that had become so precious to him. "Once upon a time," Kyra began, sitting on the edge of the bed, "there was a brave knight who lived alone in a big castle." "Was he sad?" Lila asked. "Very sad. He thought he had to protect everyone by staying away from them." "That's silly," Lila declared. "Knights need friends." "You're absolutely right," Kyra said, smiling at Selim over her daughter's head. "And do you know what happened to this knight?" "What?" "He met a princess and her little girl, and they taught him that being brave doesn't mean being alone." Selim felt his throat tighten. In the doorway, silhouetted by lamplight, he'd never felt more vulnerable or more hopeful. Later, after Lila had fallen asleep, they sat by the dying fire. The silence between them was charged with unspoken words and growing desire. "Kyra," he began, but she silenced him with a touch. "I know you think you're protecting me by keeping your distance," she said, "but I'm not some fragile flower that needs sheltering. I'm a woman who knows her own mind." "And what does your mind tell you?" She moved closer, her hand finding his face. "That I've fallen in love with a man who thinks he's beyond redemption. That I want to build a life with him if he'll have me." The kiss that followed was tender at first, then desperate, as if they were both trying to pour months of longing into a single moment. When they broke apart, Selim rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd want this again," he whispered. "Neither did I," she admitted. "But here we are." "Here we are," he agreed, and kissed her again. Their night together was a revelation, tender and passionate, filled with whispered promises and gentle touches. For the first time in years, Selim felt whole, as if all the broken pieces of himself had been carefully mended by her love. But dawn brought reality crashing back. Dust clouds on the horizon announced Reyes's return, and this time he'd brought reinforcements. "Whatever happens," Selim said, checking his guns, "I want you to know that these past weeks have been the best of my life." "Don't talk like that," Kyra said fiercely. "We're going to get through this, all of us." As the riders approached, Selim felt a calm settle over him. He'd found something worth fighting for, something worth living for, and he'd be damned if he was going to let anyone take it away. The attack came at dawn with the fury of a desert storm. Reyes had brought 12 men this time, surrounding the ranch house with methodical precision. Selim positioned himself at the front window while Kyra took the back. Their movements coordinated like dancers who'd rehearsed this deadly ballet. Voss. Reyes's voice echoed across the yard. Time to pay your debts. Selim's response was a rifle shot that dropped one of the outlaws from his horse. The man rolled in the dirt, clutching his shoulder, and chaos erupted. Bullets splintered the window frames as Selim returned fire with deadly accuracy. In the back room, Kyra held Lila close while scanning the approaches. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. She'd learned to shoot not just for survival, but for the man she loved and the future they dared to dream of. "Mama, I'm scared," Lila whispered. "I know, baby. But remember what Selim taught us? We're brave, and we protect each other." The battle raged for what felt like hours. Selim's ammunition dwindled as he picked off attackers with surgical precision. 3 men down, then 4. But there were too many, and they were closing in. "Kyra," he called over the gunfire. "The root cellar. Take Lila, and I'm not leaving." "You," she shot back, her own rifle barking as she spotted movement near the barn. A bullet shattered the lamp beside Selim's head, and he rolled away from the window, reloading quickly. His shoulder burned where flying glass had cut him, but he ignored the pain. Through the smoke and chaos, he heard Reyes shouting orders. "Burn them out. Set the barn on fire." Fear spiked through Selim as he realized their strategy. The barn was full of hay, and if it caught fire, it would spread to the house. They'd be forced into the open, where Reyes's men could cut them down. "Kyra, now!" he shouted. "The cellar!" But before she could move, a figure appeared at the back door of one of Reyes's men. Grinning as he raised his gun toward Lila, time slowed as Kyra threw herself between them, her rifle coming up instinctively. The shots came simultaneously. The outlaw's bullet caught Kyra in the shoulder, spinning her around, but her own shot found its mark. The man crumpled to the floor as Kyra fell against the wall, blood spreading across her dress. "Mama," Lila screamed. Selim's world narrowed to a single point of fury. Seeing Kyra wounded, hearing Lila's terror, something primal awakened in him. He'd spent years trying to bury the killer he'd been, but now he embraced it fully, moving with fluid grace. He appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel. His guns blazed as he advanced into the yard, each shot finding its target with mechanical precision. The outlaws scattered, unprepared for this sudden, deadly assault. "Reyes," Selim roared. "Face me." The outlaw leader stepped from behind the barn, his own gun drawn. "You always were too emotional, Voss. That's what's going to get you killed." They faced each other across 20 yards of dusty ground, 2 men whose paths had crossed in violence and would end the same way. The morning sun cast long shadows as they drew. Selim's hand moved like lightning, his gun clearing leather in a fraction of a second. But Reyes was fast too, and his shot came almost simultaneously. Bullets passed each other in the space between them, and for a moment both men stood frozen. Then Reyes smiled, raised his gun for a second shot, and toppled forward into the dirt. Selim felt the burn in his side where Reyes's bullet had found him, but he was alive. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader dead, threw down their weapons and fled. He stumbled back toward the house, his vision blurring. Kyra was there, one arm in a makeshift sling, catching him as he fell. "It's over," she whispered against his ear. "It's finally over." As he looked into her eyes, Selim saw not just love, but pride. She'd stood beside him in the darkest moment, proved herself as strong as any partner he could have asked for. Together, they'd faced his past and emerged victorious. "I love you," he said, the words coming easily now. "I love you too," she replied, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of gunpowder and hope. The summer that followed was a time of healing and growth. Selim and Kyra's wounds mended alongside their hearts, their love deepening with each passing day. The ranch, once a fortress of solitude, became a home filled with laughter and warmth. Lila had appointed herself Selim's shadow, following him everywhere as he worked. She'd learned to gather eggs, feed the chickens, and even help with the horses. Her presence had transformed him from a haunted gunslinger into something he'd never thought possible, a father figure. "Tell me about the war," she asked one evening as they sat on the porch steps. "That's not a story for little girls," he said gently, "but I want to understand why you were so sad when we met." Selim glanced at Kyra, who nodded encouragingly. "Sometimes," he began carefully, "people have to do hard things to protect the people they love. Sometimes those hard things leave marks on our hearts." "Like scars?" "Exactly like scars. But scars heal, especially when you have people who love you. Do you still have scars?" He considered the question seriously. "Yes, but they don't hurt anymore." "Do you know why?" Lila shook her head. "Because your Mama and you showed me that it's okay to be happy again." The child beamed and threw her arms around his neck. "I'm glad you're not sad anymore." As autumn approached, the question of marriage began to surface in their conversations. They'd been living as a family in all but name, their love evident to anyone who saw them together. "The preacher comes through town next month," Selim mentioned one evening as they worked in the garden together. "Does he now?" Kira replied. "Not." Looking up from the tomatoes she was picking, "Might be nice to have him stop by." If someone wanted to make things official, she straightened, a smile playing at her lips. "Are you proposing, Selim Voss?" "I'm thinking about it." "Well, think faster. A woman could get old waiting for a man to make up his mind." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Kyra Holloway, will you marry me? I thought you'd never ask." Their kiss was interrupted by Lila's excited squeal. "Are you going to be my new papa?" "If you'll have me," Selim said, kneeling to her level. "Yes." "Can I call you Papa now?" "I'd like that very much." The wedding was held on a crisp October morning, with the preacher, a few neighbors, and the whole wide sky as witnesses. Kira wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, and Selim had traded his usual black for a clean white shirt. Lila stood between them, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and beaming with joy. "Do you, Selim Voss, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, till death do you part?" "I do," he said, his voice steady and sure. "And do you, Kyra Holloway, take this? Man, to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, till death do you part." "I do," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." As their lips met, sealing their union, Selim felt the last of his walls crumble. No longer the lonely gunslinger who'd once lived in this house. He was a husband, a father, a man who'd found his purpose in love that night. As they lay in their marriage bed, Kyra traced the scars on his chest with gentle fingers. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, "giving up the wandering life?" "Never," he said firmly. "This is where I belong. With you, with Lila, this is home." "Good," she murmured, snuggling closer, "'cause I plan to keep you here for a very long time." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, but inside their little house, all was peace and contentment. The gunslinger had found his redemption in love, and the wandering woman had found her sanctuary in his arms. 5 years later, the Voss Ranch had become a testament to the power of love and second chances. What had once been a solitary outpost was now a thriving homestead, with expanded fields, a larger barn, and the sound of children's laughter echoing across the valley. Selim stood on the porch, watching his wife tend to their vegetable garden, while their 2-year-old son Marcus toddled between the rows. Lila, now 8 and wise beyond her years, was teaching Marcus how to pet the rabbits gently. "Papa!" Marcus called out, his chubby legs carrying him toward the porch. "Rabbit, I see him, son," Selim said, scooping the boy up. "Did you help Mama with the garden?" "I picked tomatoes. Good boy." The domestic scene filled Selim with a contentment he'd never imagined possible. Gone were the restless nights and haunted dreams. In their place was the steady rhythm of family life: breakfast together, afternoon naps, bedtime stories, and the quiet intimacy of marriage. Selim Kyra called from the garden, "Could you help me with this fence? The rabbits are getting too bold." He set Marcus down and joined his wife, their hands working together to repair the small breach. Even after 5 years of marriage, her touch still sent electricity through him. "I got a letter from my sister yesterday," Kyra said as they worked. "She's finally coming to visit next month." "It'll be good to meet her," Selim replied. "And good for the children to know their aunt. She wants to know if we're happy." "What did you tell her?" Kyra smiled, the expression radiant with joy. "That I found exactly what I was looking for in the most unexpected place." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lila curled up between them while Marcus slept in Kyra's arms. Selim reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd been a soldier, a gunslinger, a man running from his past. Now he was simply a husband and father, and it was enough. "Do you think Marcus will want to know about the old days?" Kyra asked, reading his thoughts. "Maybe, but I hope he'll understand that the man I was isn't the man I am now. You're a good father, Selim. Both children adore you. They adore their mother, too. You've made all the difference." "We made the difference," she corrected. Together, a shooting star blazed across the sky, and Lila gasped with delight. "Make a wish, Papa." Selim closed his eyes, though he struggled to think of anything more he could want. His family was healthy, his ranch was prosperous, and his heart was full. Finally, he settled on a simple wish, that this happiness would last. That his children would grow up safe and loved, and that he would never again take for granted the miracle of ordinary days. "What did you wish for?" Lila asked. "That's a secret," he said, tickling her until she giggled. "But I will tell you that I'm pretty sure it's already come true." As the stars emerged one by one, Selim, Vos former, gunslinger, devoted husband, loving father knew he was exactly where he belonged. The wandering was over, the fighting was done, and the future stretched ahead like a promise of endless possibilities. In the distance, coyote howled, but it no longer sounded lonely to Selim's ears. It sounded like a song of contentment, a celebration of the wild beauty of the frontier they'd all learned to call home, and in the warm circle of his family's love, surrounded by the life they'd built together from nothing more than hope and determination, Selim Vos finally understood what it meant to be truly, completely happy. The starving mother had found her sanctuary, the reluctant gunslinger had found his redemption, and together they'd created something beautiful and lasting, a love story written in the dust of the American West, where second chances bloomed like wildflowers after rain.